mean if you're a gangbanger, a drug dealer, a murderer, or a rapist, you're not getting deported. No, you're going to be prosecuted by the full extent of the law and deported from the United States. I'm talking about everyone else that is working in this country. So I think the first process is we bring them forward. They give up. They go through a background check, fingerprints, background check. Once they pass the background check, not a criminal. Good. Here's a work permit. Now go back, check with the IRS. Maybe gotta go back for 3 years. Look at your income taxes. Make sure you don't owe any money. And look, the IRS is gonna have a job in order to issue people a statement. He's good with me and the IRS, or she is good with me and the IRS. But they get a work permit. That doesn't mean that's not citizenship. They will be in the Senate version, for example. It's 10 years, right? They stay in this program for 10 years. They work hard. They sweat and they toil. They learn English, take civics classes, right? Keep their noses clean and contribute to this country. And at the end of the 10 years, then they can say, hey, I did everything required of the program, right? I've worked. I've raised my children. I've bought a house. Admit me now. And then they'll get a green card. And in the Senate version, 3 years of a green card, they can then apply for American citizenship. And a lot has been said about this American citizenship. And, a lot of criticism about how long it takes. Look, if I'm a permanent resident of the United States and I apply for my wife today, depending on what country I'm trying to bring her from, it will take 9 to 14 years to bring her legally as a permanent resident. So I kind of question this whole thing about 13 years for somebody who is undocumented in the United States to reach American citizenship. The important point for me, and I believe for our immigrant community, is there be a pathway to citizenship, that ultimately we don't have a two-tier structure in America.
So not the time frame as much as the end goal.
I think the end goal is what is essential. First and foremost, it's 1,400 today, 1,400 tomorrow that will be deported. And it goes undeterred. 1.6 million during the last 4 years. Unprecedented number of deportation. That stops. That stops. And I think that is a huge part of what is pushing comprehensive immigration reform.
And most important, so I think what Fung was getting at, there's going to be a window. The Senate bill, I believe, has a 6-month window between enactment and the beginning of accepting applications for legalization, as long as DHS meets the criteria. That 6-month window, you're saying President Obama will need to proactively stop deportations for folks in that 6-month window.
Look, if we don't have it in the bill, then the president will be hearing from me the moment he signs.
Will you be getting arrested in front of the White House again?
I have to tell you something. I will do all of the things necessary in order to bring attention to the plight of undocumented workers in this country. I have to tell you something. You look at, what is this community? Everybody says, who are these people? These illegals, they call them. You know who they are? 2/3 of them have been here more than 10 years. 1/3 of them have been here more than 15 years. 4 million American citizen children. They're the parents of 4 million American citizen children. 9 out of 10 of them have, and I'm talking about American citizen family, aunts, uncles. They're part of the fabric, and the other thing is, we're getting away from this silly notion that in America, somehow we're going to allow some new system that is going to go out and pick up 11 million people. Can you imagine the police state? America won't tolerate that kind of police state. The Congress of the United States, even the ugliest, most xenophobic member of Congress has never devised a plan, right? No, an effective plan. He says, here's the money, and we've got the will to go and pick up 11 million people. Hence, many of them are in this country having children, creating communities, and working very hard. And lastly, look, you're sitting down and you're drinking that glass of Chardonnay and it came from California. You know the likelihood, as you're sipping on it, it came from hands of undocumented worker. When you got that lettuce and tomato and that strawberry on the side, you know who picked it. Isn't it time that we allow the very people who put food on our table? Because in the end, we're going to have to make a decision. Do we want foreigners in foreign countries providing us with our food, or do we want foreigners in our own country, right, under our supervision, picking our crops?
Congressman, can I get your reaction to what we heard from Steve King and Louis Gohmert earlier this week, tying what happened in Boston to this immigration debate, saying we need to be careful here because of what happened in Boston. of how we open up our borders or we do some sort of immigration?
You know, doing nothing, which is exactly what happens under their proposal, allows America to be less safe. I want to make America safe. We spend $18 billion a year on enforcement, on our immigration enforcement. And just so the American public understands, what does that $18 billion? That's more than we spend on the FBI, on Secret Service, on the ATF. Come on. If you legalize 11 million people, you take a whole bunch of folks right off the table. Now there's a smaller community of people that you can use that $18 billion to go after. That's what I want. I want to use the money to go and to be, how would I say it, smarter, right, about getting after the bad actors. So I say comprehensive immigration reform secures our borders. Look, as long as I can go to a street corner in just about any major city in the United States of America and get myself a social security card and buy myself a driver's license and buy myself IDs, it's happening as we speak. How secure do we feel? I'm going to have a verification system in place that is designed to do two things: to make sure we're all authorized to work here, and if you hire somebody that's not authorized, through audits and through fines and through jail sentences, we're going to make that happen. This is Luis Gutierrez, the advocate of immigrants, saying we will not tolerate a system that does not guarantee that people born in this country, American citizens born in this country, don't get the first crack at an American job.
Two different things, and sort of related. There's been a lot of talk about the cutoff date in the Senate bill. Are you guys close to any figuring out a cutoff date in the House bill?
I have to tell you, I will. We're not there yet. We're not. I've read that theirs is December
31st,
2011. So it's 14 months. I mean, in 2007 it was like 5 years. It was really
and cutoff date for people who don't know.
A cutoff date, that is who qualifies for the program. Okay. Well, you have to have a cutoff date because people are reading the papers and watching the news and saying, and that's why I believe you need to do. When I heard...
So if you've been here before...
You have to be here before December 31st of 2011 and be able to prove it. And when President Obama finally responded to the demands of our community in June of 2012 and issued DACA, the executive order, right? Basically, it's called deferred action. What did that mean? If you came here as a youngster under the age of 16 or younger, and you came here, right, and you went to high school and you finished high school, then we were going to give you deferred action. We're going to put you safe from deportation. I have one of the youngsters working in my congressional office today, right? He was undocumented. Now he's filling out applications. And you get a work permit. My point is that is the kind of system that we want to put in place to make sure that everybody, but in order to get that, you have to go through a background check.
We have a little bit more than 5 minutes left.
How many people, this is sort of tied to that cutoff date, and I understand you guys aren't there on a date yet, but so there's an estimated 11 million currently here illegally. There are, the Senate bill also applies to some who've been recently deported. If you had to guess, how many of those 11 million do you expect will qualify for legal status?
I expect, look, they're going to have to go through a background check.
Right.
And we're very clear.
I mean, are we talking?
If you're a criminal, we don't want you in our system.
Are we talking more than that?
The immense majority of them. I have to tell you something. The Obama administration has instituted a system throughout. I mean, you don't deport 1.6 million people because you have more agents. It's because you have a system prepared through secure communities and through other federal relationships with local authorities that allow you to detain and deport the immigrants. That system is in place, and it's very, very vigorous. So I would imagine that a lot of the bad actors are gone, right? And any of the future actors, if they apply for them, I'd love for a criminal alien, foreigner, right, to apply for this program so that we can say, really, you're a criminal and you apply for the program, and we'd go right to your house and pick you up and deport you.
Congressman, I have a question for you about the Hispanic community, where you've been a real advocate for them for as long as you've been in Congress, and you also spend a lot of time talking to the Spanish language press. Can you describe how you see the community as they view this bill, sure, and through the Hispanic press, as opposed to, Steve and I both write for English language? Sure. And what would you want to see happen in merging them?
Sure. So when I speak to, so if you were an anchor of one of the Spanish language, you might come and say, "Oh, Luis, 13 years, that's so long." And my response to you is, shall we continue with the deportations that you report on every day? Is that what you want? I mean, if you are held in custody, right, by law enforcement in the United States and by immigration agents, and you're about to get on a plane, and they say to you, "By the way, Luis, we really won't deport you to your country. We're going to give you a work permit, social security card. You can get a driver's license, and you can go get a job and travel to your country. But you can't be a citizen for 13 years. Or you can get on this plane, and we will deport you and separate you from your wife and your children. What's your option?" I think I understand what the option. The community wants people to be in a safe place, free from the deportations, and to be able to live a normal life without living in terror, which is what the community lives in. So that's the kind of conversation I would be having for them. Let's put them in a safe place, and ultimately the issue. The other thing I would say, in 1986, 3 million people applied to adjust their status to become legal in the United States. Half of them today have not applied for American citizenship. 8 million permanent residents in the United States. I talk to them all the time. You know, I encourage them. Who encourages them more than me to become American citizens? They're not American citizens. The important thing is the ones that did become American citizens, and making sure that a system is still there for those who love and cherish this country enough to make a commitment, a lifetime commitment to this nation. That's an important principle that we must keep alive.
Let me ask you one on, there's a theory I've heard a couple of immigrant rights advocates talk about your role in these negotiations, and they believe that President Obama simply has no credibility with with House Republicans in particular on a number of different issues, but this one in particular, they're afraid he's too happy to use it as a political issue against them. Essentially, their argument is that you're uniquely positioned to be able to do this because you've earned trust with them. I guess two questions about that. First is, how do you describe your role in that? And second is, what's the best role for President Obama as this bill goes through Congress? Should he stay quiet and stay in the White House? Or are there calls that he can make that won't ruin this? What's the best role for him?
Well, first of all, when I spoke, the president called a few of us to a meeting last January and asked us for our advice. And a few of us, I included, suggested to him not to drop a bill. And we said to him, "Mr. President, you need to go around this country and use that bully pulpit to make sure that everybody understands what is necessary and to explain and educate the American public about the importance of comprehensive immigration and the urgency." But we asked him not to drop a bill. You know that some of his aides decided, notwithstanding our advice to the president, not to drop a bill, to show it to some members of the press. What did the president have to do? He had to call John McCain, right? He had to call Lindsey Graham, Senator Graham, and apologize for doing that. So it seems like we gave him good advice, right? Having said that, come on, that's the way the system was designed. Let the members of the House do their negotiation. I get to spend a lot more time with Raul Labrador than the president does. Therefore, I should have a better personal relationship and a relationship based on trust than the president could probably ever have with him. And I think we can share with one another. And whether it's him or Sam Johnson or Carter, look, tomorrow in Chicago is Monday. I'm going to be with Paul Ryan. The 29th in San Antonio, Congressman Judge Carter is going to be with me at noon with the Chamber of Commerce in San Antonio. They're coming forward so that we can have a debate and a discussion with the American people. I don't know that the President of the United States is uniquely in a position to share a stage or a podium with anyone, much less members of the House of Representatives. Yet for us, I think we break through the logjam. Because you know what? You spend enough hours in a room talking to somebody, sharing meals with them, and discussing the pro and con. We have a principle in our negotiation, right? Never, and this will break the deal. Never end the conversation, this will break the deal. Always end the conversation, here's what we need to do to reach a conclusion.
So, Congressman, it sounds like you do want him to just stay out of it then.
What I want the President of the United States is to continue to use his bully pulpit as he should, and to go around this country and to continue to talk about the plight of the immigrant community, the necessity for security, and to say, as he has, I'm very joyful that the president, first thing he did is he talked to John McCain and to Schumer, got on the phone with them, and what did he say? Great, I like this. It's not my version, but he was positive. He's playing a positive role. Look, here's my only point. The moment for the president to be the sole leader on immigration that moment passed. He had 4 years. The moment is past. The moment today is for all of us in the House and in the Senate, in a collaboration with this president, because in the end, he's got to sign the bill. And look, there's going to come some hard times, and we're going to need him to use that bully pulpit, I believe, in the future to make sure that when this thing starts, it's going to get stymied. There's going to be hiccups. You guys have been around long enough. We're going to need him there. So he is critical and essential to this process.
We're out of time, but I want to ask real quick on gun legislation. Does it happen in the House? Does it happen at all in either chamber?
I can't see how it's going to happen in the House if they can't get it done in the Senate. We have the numbers in the Senate. We control the agenda in the Senate. I don't see the Judiciary Committee and the House Republicans allowing a bill. We need to get it done in the Senate in order to have. I'm still hopeful, but we needed to get it done in the Senate. I don't want to put the burden on them and kind of say, we're in the minority. The members are in the minority. We don't control the system that allows for legislation to be acted. If we did, I think we could get the votes to pass it, but there'll never be a vote on the legislation.
Congressman, thank you very much for being our newsmaker. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
And we're back with our reporters, Fawn Johnson of National Journal and Stephen Dinan of the Washington Times. Stephen, if I could begin with you, that we saw this past week, the Senate drops their immigration proposal from this so-called Gang of Eight in the Senate. The congressman, part of a Gang of Eight in the House. When, how, why, what's going on with this gang?
There are a lot of questions about that. We know a lot more about the Senate than we do about the House. We have several Senate hearings that are scheduled, and then the bill will go through Senate committee and to the Senate floor. And all of that is fairly certain at this point, especially given the makeup of the Senate Judiciary Committee, that a bill will get out of there into the Senate floor. The House is a lot more different. You have this gang that's operating there until this week, when the Senate bill came out, the gang in the House didn't even acknowledge publicly that they were in existence as a gang, though it was the worst kept secret in Washington. But there's also that's in some ways, while it has blessing from House Republican leaders to some extent, it's much different than where you had the chairman of the Judiciary Committee in the Senate who was actively pushing, and the majority leader in the Senate who was actively pushing. In the House, you have the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, who's a Republican, Bob Goodlatte, who has said he's taking a different track altogether. He's talking about maybe going for some piecemeal bills and doing hearings and trying to see where there are points that everybody can agree on and move those bills. And so it's not exactly clear right now how those all get merged together, though I guess I would say, given the political pressure on this, I imagine that they find a way to do a process. I don't know what the end result of that process is, but I do imagine they find a way to get something fairly broad onto the House floor at some point.
So Fawn Johnson, does this House Gang of Eight come up with something? Is that will they have some proposal? And if so, when would we hear about it?
I think they will actually have a proposal, and I've heard different versions from different members of the gang, of the House gang, and a lot of them, when they talk, they're very careful about saying that I can't, reveal who they are. But I think, they have legislative text, and they've had text for several years on some of these provisions. I had heard that they were having a little bit of trouble with one of the pieces involving a new work visa program. That's also been a bit of an issue in the Senate, so it's not at all a surprise that they're going to be having difficulty. But I think in the end, it wouldn't be too difficult for that group of 8 to come up with something and put it out there. The only question is what happens to it then, so they've got to be careful about the timing. And the other thing that I've heard is that they want very much to make sure that whatever they put forward is full consensus. Not that everybody agrees with it, they all agree that this is the best that they can do, and they don't want to write what they would call placeholder language. So this is the kind of language that you just like, well, we'll figure that out later, but we want to move forward. So, but they also are a little bit competitive with the Senate. They want to make sure that they're not ignored in this process. So my guess is that at some point in the next couple of months, they're probably going to unveil something.
Congressman Gutierrez said whatever comes out of the House is likely to be more conservative than what we saw from the Senate. He talked about triggers. Is it likely that this bill has so-called triggers in it in order to get Republicans to approve it, to vote yes?
Yeah, I'm sure that it has some sort of, essentially a benchmark that has to be met. But the thing that I was
before you go forward with citizenship,
but not legalization. I think that's the real concern for the congressman. Clearly, is that the citizenship piece, yes, let's make it contingent on some reasonable benchmarks, and you can define that however you want. But the legalization needs to be happen relatively quickly, or he's going to pull his support.
And you heard something interesting that he did say about there's going to be a window between the time the bill is signed by the president and whenever the legalization happens. And he said that he would call on the president to stop deportations of most people, the rank and file, who don't have severe criminal records and whatnot. He'll call on the president to stop those deportations in that time. And so, there will be a lot of interesting questions that will be posed about enforcement in that, and the president will have to answer those at some point. But I think it's safe to say that once the bill goes into effect, the legalization, whether it's de facto or full, full strength of the law, will happen almost immediately, and then from there, the citizenship will be probably a decade or more down the road.
And Fawn, the president's role in all of this? What did you hear from the congressman?
Well, the congressman has not been, he's been probably the best or the biggest Democratic critic of the president on immigration out there, particularly in the Congress. There's a few immigration advocates who've been willing to say that Obama hasn't helped them, but he got himself arrested in front of the White House protesting the deportation policy in 2010. So I think that it's from what I understand, it's been difficult for the president to try and figure out what his role is, because he really is basically supposed to be doing the cheerleader role for the House and the Senate, rather than actually being presidential in the sense of
negotiating
the bill. Which is, keep in mind that when this was the same concept was last being discussed in the Bush administration, there were members of both the Department of Homeland Security and the Commerce Department up on the Hill every day when they were doing this, and I'm not seeing that now.
Stephen Dinan, Fawn Johnson, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Good.
Next on C-SPAN, a look at the